What comes to mind when you hear the word egoism? Is it greed, selfishness, or perhaps a callous disregard for others? These ideas are often the first associations, but they are fundamentally wrong. Ayn Rand, the philosopher behind Objectivism, challenged this deeply ingrained misconception. She argued that egoism is not about harming others or taking from them, but about living for yourself, intentionally, rationally, and purposefully. Today, we are going to dismantle the myths surrounding egoism and uncover its true power as a tool for personal growth and fulfillment. Rand believed that society has long perpetuated a false morality based on self-sacrifice. We are told that placing others above ourselves is the highest virtue, that to live morally, we must suppress our own desires, happiness, and goals for the sake of others. In The Virtue of Selfishness, Rand famously wrote, "Man must live for his own sake, neither sacrificing himself to others nor sacrificing others to himself." This simple yet profound idea turns conventional morality on its head and offers a radically empowering perspective. The truth is, self-sacrifice as a moral ideal is not sustainable. When you consistently put the needs of others before your own, you erode your sense of self-worth. You diminish your potential, your happiness, and your ability to contribute meaningfully to the world. Rand called this the morality of altruism, and she viewed it as deeply destructive. She argued that you cannot genuinely help others if you are depleted, resentful, or living a life that is not your own. Think about the common narrative surrounding altruism. A person is praised for giving everything they have to others, even if it destroys them. But who benefits from this destruction? What is noble about a life lived in misery for someone else's sake? Rand rejected this notion and offered a bold alternative: the morality of rational self-interest. Rational self-interest, as Rand defined it, is not about selfish whims or impulsive greed. It is about using reason to guide your life and pursuing what truly fulfills you. It means valuing your own life as the highest purpose and taking responsibility for achieving your happiness. This is not an excuse to exploit or harm others. Quite the opposite. Rational self-interest is about living with integrity, making choices that align with your values, and creating a life of meaning and purpose. Consider this. Innovators, creators, and leaders who have shaped history, were they guided by self-sacrifice?
No.
They were driven by their own vision, passion, and dedication to their goals. They created value not by denying themselves, but by embracing their potential. As Rand said, "The man who does not value himself cannot value anything or anyone." By valuing themselves, they contributed to society in extraordinary ways. So, why does egoism remain misunderstood? Because it challenges deeply ingrained beliefs. It forces us to rethink what it means to live ethically and purposefully. But this is precisely why it is so powerful. Rational self-interest is not a flaw, it is a virtue. It empowers you to live authentically, unapologetically, and intentionally. If you are ready to question the myths, to break free from the constraints of self-sacrifice, and to discover how embracing egoism can transform your life, then you are in the right place. Together, we will explore the liberating philosophy of Ayn Rand and uncover why egoism is not only ethical but essential for a life of fulfillment and success. This is just the beginning. Now, let us delve into what Ayn Rand called rational self-interest. This concept is the cornerstone of her philosophy, Objectivism, and it offers a radically different way of thinking about morality and life itself. Rational self-interest is not just about looking out for yourself. It is about using reason as your guide to living a purposeful, fulfilling, and ethical life. In her seminal work, The Virtue of Selfishness, Rand defined rational self-interest as the principle that every individual's own life and happiness are their highest moral purposes. She wrote, "Man must choose his actions, values, and goals by the standard of that which is proper to man, for the purpose of preserving, fulfilling, and enjoying the irreplaceable value, which is his life." This idea is profound because it frames self-interest not as a fleeting impulse, but as a deeply rational and ethical framework for living. Let us be clear, rational self-interest is not the same as selfishness in the pejorative sense. It is not about exploiting others or indulging in whims without thought for the consequences. Selfishness, in the conventional sense, is thoughtless, destructive, and often short-sighted. Rational self-interest, by contrast, is thoughtful, deliberate, and grounded in reason. It is about pursuing what is genuinely good for you, long-term happiness, success, and fulfillment, while respecting the rights and values of others. Imagine you are an architect designing a building. Would you use random materials without considering their durability or compatibility? Of course not. You would carefully choose each element to ensure the building stands strong for years to come. Rational self-interest works the same way. It involves making choices that align with your values and goals, ensuring your life is built on a foundation of integrity and purpose. Rand often criticized the morality of altruism for its demand that individuals sacrifice their own well-being for the sake of others. She argued that such a framework is incompatible with human flourishing. In her words, altruism does not mean benevolence. It means that the beneficiary of your actions is the only criterion of moral value, and so long as that beneficiary is anybody other than yourself, anything goes. Rational self-interest, on the other hand, asserts that your own happiness matters, that your life is yours to live, and that you have every right to pursue what fulfills you. Let us look at an example of how rational self-interest functions in the real world. Consider an entrepreneur building a business. If they were guided by altruism, they might feel obligated to prioritize others' needs over their vision, leading to a diluted product and a failing enterprise. But if they embrace rational self-interest, they focus on creating a business that reflects their values, pursuing excellence, and delivering true value to customers. This is not exploitation, it is a win-win. The entrepreneur achieves their goals, and the customers benefit from the product or service. This is the beauty of rational self-interest. It aligns your personal growth with the value you bring to others. By prioritizing your happiness and living according to your values, you naturally create value for the world. As Rand put it, happiness is the successful state of life. Pain is an agent of death. Happiness is that state of consciousness which proceeds from the achievement of one's values. So, what does rational self-interest mean for you? It means taking the time to understand your values and goals. It means making choices based on logic and long-term benefit, not guilt or societal pressure. It means living with integrity, pursuing your happiness unapologetically, and contributing to the world in a way that is authentic to you. This is not just a philosophy. It is a blueprint for living a life of purpose and fulfillment. When you embrace rational self-interest, you take control of your destiny, and that is the first step toward true success. Now that we have uncovered the essence of rational self-interest, it is time to examine how embracing egoism leads directly to success. Ayn Rand argued that success is not a matter of chance or sacrifice. It is the result of intentional effort, guided by reason, and rooted in the pursuit of personal values. When you understand and prioritize your own happiness, you unlock the power to achieve greatness. Rand believed that success begins with a fundamental respect for one's own life. In her novel Atlas Shrugged, she wrote, "Achievement of your happiness is the only moral purpose of your life, and that happiness, not pain or mindless self-indulgence, is the proof of your moral integrity." This is a powerful idea. Happiness is not just a byproduct of success, it is the ultimate measure of it. And achieving that happiness requires effort, focus, and a clear sense of purpose. Let us start with an important principle. Success through egoism requires clarity. You must know what you want and why you want it. Too many people drift through life chasing goals that are not their own, jobs they dislike, relationships they do not value, or lifestyles that look good on the surface but feel empty inside. Why? Because they are following external expectations instead of their own values. Egoism demands a different approach. It asks you to take a step back, reflect on your desires, and align your actions with what truly matters to you. When you do this, you begin to act with intention. Imagine an artist creating a masterpiece. Every brushstroke, every choice of color is deliberate and meaningful. The artist is not driven by what others want, but by their own vision. The same principle applies to your life. Success comes from living deliberately, making decisions that bring you closer to your goals, and refusing to compromise on what is important to you. But here is the crucial part. Success through egoism is not a solitary pursuit. When you succeed on your own terms, you create value not just for yourself, but for others. Ayn Rand emphasized this in her philosophy of Objectivism. She argued that rational self-interest naturally leads to mutually beneficial outcomes. In The Virtue of Selfishness, she wrote, "The purpose of morality is to teach you, not to suffer and die, but to enjoy yourself and live. By pursuing your happiness and achieving your goals, you contribute to the world in ways that only you can." Think of the innovators and entrepreneurs who have changed the world. They were not motivated by self-sacrifice. They succeeded because they believed in their vision, worked tirelessly to achieve it, and created products or services that improved people's lives. This is success through egoism in action, the pursuit of personal happiness that creates value for society. Now, let us address a common criticism. Some argue that prioritizing your success means stepping on others to get ahead. But that is a fundamental misunderstanding of rational self-interest. Rand was clear that egoism does not mean harming others or exploiting them. It means creating your own path without compromising your values or integrity. True success is built on a foundation of respect for yourself and others. For example, a business owner who operates with rational self-interest seeks to build a successful company by offering genuine value to their customers, treating employees fairly, and fostering innovation. This is not altruism. It is rational, ethical self-interest. Everyone involved benefits, and the world is better for it. This brings us to the deeper meaning of success. It is not just about wealth, fame, or external validation. It is about fulfillment. It is about waking up every day knowing you are living a life that reflects your values, a life you have built with intention and purpose. Ayn Rand wrote, "To live, man must hold three things as the supreme and ruling values of his life: reason, purpose, self-esteem." These values are the foundation of true success. So, ask yourself, are you living intentionally? Are you pursuing success on your terms? Or are you letting others define your goals? When you embrace rational self-interest, you take control of your life. You stop living passively and start living with purpose. And that, as Rand would say, is the essence of a truly moral life, a life of achievement, happiness, and success. We have explored how rational self-interest leads to success and fulfillment, but to fully appreciate its value, we must examine the alternative: self-sacrifice. Ayn Rand was unequivocal in her criticism of self-sacrifice as a moral ideal, calling it a destructive force that undermines both the individual and society. To live a life of purpose and fulfillment, you must reject the notion that your worth is defined by how much you give up for others. In her book The Fountainhead, Rand illustrated the dangers of self-sacrifice through the character of Peter Keating, a man who consistently compromises his own values and happiness to please others and fit societal expectations. Keating's life becomes a cautionary tale, a slow unraveling of potential and joy because he fails to live for himself. Rand made it clear that when you sacrifice your dreams, happiness, or integrity for others, you lose the very essence of who you are. The morality of self-sacrifice often sounds noble on the surface. We are told that putting others first is virtuous, that living for the sake of others is the highest moral good. But Rand argued that this is a false morality, one that asks you to negate your own existence for the benefit of others. In The Virtue of Selfishness, she wrote, "Self-sacrifice? But it is precisely the self that cannot and must not be sacrificed." She saw this kind of thinking as not only harmful but immoral because it denies the fundamental value of your life. Think about the emotional toll of self-sacrifice. When you constantly put others' needs above your own, you begin to feel resentment. You feel drained, unfulfilled, and disconnected from your own desires. Over time, this can lead to burnout, frustration, and a profound sense of emptiness. Rand called this the morality of death because it requires you to deny the very things that make life worth living: your passions, your purpose, and your happiness. But here's the paradox. Those who demand self-sacrifice from you are often the least willing to make sacrifices themselves. They are quick to ask for your time, energy, and resources, but they rarely stop to consider the cost to you. Ayn Rand described this dynamic as parasitical. She wrote, "The man who allows himself to be sacrificed for the sake of others is not a noble martyr, but a moral slave." To live a life of self-sacrifice is to give up your freedom, your autonomy, and your right to happiness. Now, let us be clear. Rejecting self-sacrifice does not mean rejecting kindness, generosity, or love. Rand believed in the importance of relationships and community, but she argued that these must be based on mutual respect and shared values, not one-sided sacrifice. She wrote, "The man who does not value himself cannot value anything or anyone." When you value yourself, your relationships become richer and more meaningful because they are built on choice, not obligation. Consider this example. A parent who sacrifices their health, happiness, and dreams entirely for their children may believe they are doing the right thing. But what lesson does this teach? It shows their children that self-neglect is a virtue, perpetuating a cycle of unhappiness. A better approach, rooted in rational self-interest, would be to model a life of balance and fulfillment, demonstrating that it is possible to care for others while also prioritizing your own well-being. Rand's philosophy reminds us that self-sacrifice is not a path to virtue, it is a path to destruction. She rejected the idea that morality requires suffering and argued instead that morality should guide us toward joy, purpose, and success. She wrote, "To say, 'I love you,' one must first be able to say that I. You cannot give to others meaningfully if you have nothing left to give to yourself." So, ask yourself, are you living for others at the expense of your own happiness? Are you sacrificing your dreams, your time, or your values to meet someone else's expectations? If the answer is yes, it is time to reclaim your life. Rational self-interest is not selfishness, it is self-respect. And by respecting yourself, you create the foundation for a life of purpose, integrity, and true fulfillment. Reject the chains of self-sacrifice and embrace the freedom to live authentically. This is not just a choice, it is a moral imperative. We have explored the myths surrounding egoism, the power of rational self-interest, the path to success it unlocks, and the cost of self-sacrifice. Now, we arrive at the final and most important question: what does this mean for your life? How can you take these ideas and use them to build a future that is both fulfilling and principled? Ayn Rand believed that the ultimate purpose of life is happiness, not fleeting pleasure, but the profound joy that comes from living in alignment with your values. The lesson here is simple. Embracing self-interest is not just an option, it is your moral responsibility. Let us return to Rand's powerful assertion in Atlas Shrugged. "I swear by my life and my love of it that I will never live for the sake of another man, nor ask another man to live for mine." This is not a rejection of relationships, community, or collaboration. It is a celebration of individuality. It is a commitment to living authentically, to respecting yourself enough to pursue your happiness unapologetically, and to refusing to compromise your values for anyone or anything. But living a life of rational self-interest is not without its challenges. The world often rewards conformity, celebrates self-sacrifice, and stigmatizes egoism. You will encounter resistance, misunderstanding, and even judgment. That is why embracing self-interest requires courage. It means standing firm in your values, even when others disagree. It means trusting your reason, your vision, and your ability to create a life that reflects your purpose. So, where do you begin? Start by asking yourself the most important question: what do I want from my life? Not what others want for you, not what society expects of you, but what you truly want. Then take action. Make decisions that align with your goals and values, and refuse to let guilt or fear dictate your path. This is not selfishness. This is self-respect. It is the foundation of a life well lived. In our next videos, we will explore one of Ayn Rand's most controversial topics: capitalism as the only moral economic system. Is it true freedom, or does it exploit the weak? You might be surprised by the answers. Subscribe now so you do not miss it, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice matters in this conversation. Remember, as Rand herself put it, the question isn't who is going to let me, it's who is going to stop me. The only limits to your success and fulfillment are the ones you accept. So, take what you have learned today and start building the life you deserve, one rooted in reason, purpose, and self-respect. The power is in your hands. Choose to live it.